Hi there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and blog. Today is part 2 of the two-part series of 10 Cards, 1 Kit featuring Simon Says Stamps May 2018 card kit. This video will have cards 6 through 10. If you missed part 1, be sure to head back to my channel and check it out because part 1 gives a brief overview of the kit's contents and it has cards numbers 1 through 5. As I said in part 1, this kit is in fact sold out, but Simon Says Stamp usually does a pretty good job of stocking those items in their store. So let's get right into the cards. For card number 6, I trimmed down a piece of that beautiful pattern paper from the Pink Fresh Studios Let Your Heart Decide paper pack, and I trimmed that down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And now I'm trimming out the sayings on another of those papers that looks like little post-its taped to the wall. I'm just rearranging them, and I decide that I want to attach those with some foam tape to give this card some dimension. And I do that with each one of those. I just love how those look. They're all very encouraging little quotes, and that paper just looked too cute not to kind of cut up and see what I could do with it. So once I get all of those attached with the foam tape, I do have a lot of excess, so I'm just going to trim those off. I flip it over, trim it off. And there's one chunk that's kind of big, so I decide to take that and put a little foam tape on it and kind of fill in that little gap there on the side. And once again, I'll trim or turn that over and trim off the excess of that one as well. For my sentiment, I grab a piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock and I place it in my stamp platform. That sentiment comes from the 6x8 Simon Says Stamp set called Everything Together. They're such big, beautiful, bold sayings. And I'm just conditioning that stamp a little bit with my hand since I haven't used it yet. And I'm going to use the Not Quite Navy ink from Stampin' Up. I don't know if that ink is still available. I just have it in my stash and so I'm using it. And so I ink that up a couple times. That's the beauty of the stamp platform, because you can tell I didn't get a good impression the first time. So I'll just re-ink it and stamp it again. And then off screen, I used my circle nestabilities from Spellbinders, and I ran that through my Big Shot to get the circle. To adhere it to my card, I put down some foam tape in the spots where the circle would cover it, because I thought about popping it up with more dimension and making it double, but I thought I'll just lay that flat to the card. And then I peel that off and I grab some of my liquid adhesive, which is the Tombow Mono Multi, and I just put a little bit over there so that it makes sure that those pieces are down good and tight. And then to adhere that to my card base, which is a standard A2 card base that I cut and scored from the ivory cardstock that came in the kit, I am just using that same liquid glue and I'm going to adhere that and it'll cover up the whole base. To embellish the card, I grabbed the Pink Fresh Studios Let Your Heart Decide Puffy stickers from the kit. They're nice in the fact that, well, they give dimension, and if you don't push down too hard at first, they won't completely adhere, which is nice, but once you push them down, they will be down. So to take care of the inside of my card, I took some of those leftover quotes that I had, which I had about 4 of them, and I decided to just glue those to the inside at the bottom. And then I just flip it over and I trim off the excess. And that's going to actually end up finishing off card number 6. For card number 7, I take some Neenah Solar White cardstock and I put that into my stamp platform because I've decided I want to use the flowers from the Everything Together stamp set. I'm going to ink up my big flower the same way that I did for one of my cards in part 1. And so to do that, I'm going to end up taking the corner of my ink pad, which in this case is the Lawn Fawn Wild Rose, and I'm going to ink up that center and then blot away what I don't want with a paper towel. And then I'm going to use the Simon Says stamp after I stamp that down. And if I get the good impression that I did not get, so I push down a little harder. After I get what I want, I'll kind of wipe that off, and then I'll grab the Simon Says Stamp Spring Rain Hybrid ink that came in the kit, and I'm going to ink the petals and the other flowers with that. And I stamp it again just to, make sure that I've got good coverage. And once I have what I want, I'm going to flip that paper. Just turning it, and I'll tack it down with those magnets again, and I'm going to repeat the process. And I fussy cut those off camera because, believe me, you'd have been bored. Which I don't mind. I don't mind fussy cutting stuff. Sometimes it's kind of therapeutic for me. So I use my stamp platform again to stamp my sentiment, and I'm going to use some Lawn Fawn jet black ink on that sentiment that says, "Miss you like crazy." I'll stamp it a couple times just to make sure it's good and crisp. It's the beauty of that stamp platform, I'm telling you. If you don't have one, you should think about getting one. So I trim that down a little bit just to get my card ready to assemble. And my card base is some mustard cardstock from my stash that did not come in the kit. And the pattern paper has been trimmed down to 4 by 5 1/4, so it fits nicely on that top folding A2 size card. And then I'll just assemble my card like I usually do, using some Tombow Mono Multi to put down that base. And then I'm going to use some foam tape because I want my sentiment popped up. And then once the sentiment is popped up, I'm going to try and put those flowers around kind of like they were before, but I'm going to trim down the pieces just so I can make it look like they're coming out from behind. And I'll use my liquid glue to adhere those down. Those flowers are quite pretty, and that technique is kind of fun. You can get some neat looks with some different inks that you use. And I'll have some of those coming off the panel, and that's okay because I'll just turn it over and trim it down later. I always like having things coming off of my cards. It just brings the continuity a little bit better sometimes. It makes it look like things weren't just stamped right in the middle. So I'll trim those off. And then I'm going to grab the Pink Fresh Studios Let Your Heart Decide epoxy heart stickers. Golly, they're so pretty. They're shiny, and I just wanted to put hearts on everything. I had a hard time deciding the placement of some of these these two hearts. As you can see, I kind of move it around like, oh, will it look good here? Oh, let's put it over the stamping that I just did. No, forget that. So I do finally decide to stick it down on top there. And then I grab another one that's sort of the same color, and I just put that down below. And that'll finish off card number 7. For card number 8, I want to use that Simon Says stamp 3 by 4 inch Take Heart stamp that comes in the kit, as well as several of the patterned papers. So my card base is the Audrey blue cardstock that comes in the kit, and I trimmed that down to 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and I folded it into a top folding A2 size card. I didn't write down the measurements for the rest of the stuff that I stamped. And now I'm going to do some what I'm calling half stamping. So you saw me ink up half of my stamp with the Simon Says Stamp Melon Hybrid ink cube that came in the set. And I stamped it at first and I didn't care for it, so I'm going to do it again. And so half of it was with the melon, and then the other half is the Lawn Fawn Wild Rose ink. And I just think it's so pretty to do that. And you can do that with all kinds of combinations of colors. And for the rest of the sentiment, I just grabbed my Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink and stamped that down. To stamp my teacup image, I'm stamping that on some 110-pound Kansan XL watercolor paper using that same Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink because it's waterproof. I plan to use my watercolor, Mission watercolors, and my number 4 silver paintbrush. I used these for a couple of cards in the first part, and I plan to use it for a couple of the cards here in this second part. As I said before, I'm not super proficient in watercolor, especially when it comes to like watercoloring images per se. I can do landscapes, I can do abstract, I can do all kinds of other stuff, and I don't do terrible at watercoloring images like this. I could definitely use a little bit more work and help, but all that stuff always comes with practice. So as I said before, I plan to take time when I have more time. If it wasn't graduation season right now and all these other things going on, I would probably be in there painting right now. But yeah, so anyway, here I'm just kind of enjoying just painting, and these watercolors are great. My husband got them on a really super great sale at Christmas time, and so I use them whenever I can. So I heat set my image and I fussy cut it out, leaving a white border. And I'm using liquid glue to glue down all of my elements. And I do that pretty quickly. Like I said, I didn't write down any of the measurements of any of those. But I am using some foam tape because I do want my teacup to have a little bit of dimension. And I clean up a little image there, or that image there, with my just some clean water. The Pink Fresh Studios Let Your Heart Decide Puffy Heart stickers, I put that on the teacup, and I use my corner chomper to finish off the edges, and I'm inking up my teacup with the Spring Rain ink cube, and I'm stamping that on the inside to finish off card number 8. For card number 9, I trimmed my pattern paper down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and it's pretty thick pattern paper, so I'm actually going to take one of the cut off strips and I'm going to glue it down so that the white back is facing up on my panel. Waste not, want not, right? Although, who are we kidding? We always want more craft supplies. And then I'll trim off the excess. I'm going to grab those Puffy stickers from the Pink Fresh Studios Let Your Heart Decide set. And I'm going to put those across the white banner. And I have found the easiest way to do this is kind of try to find the middle there. And then you position your others on the outside. And then you can put the last 2 in between. And you shouldn't screw up. Well, I have. But, you should get placement a little bit better. I'm going to ink up the stitching that comes from that Everything Together stamp set with some Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'm going to stamp that across the top of my paper. And I'm going to grab more Puffy stickers, and I'm going to just put those all over the card. Grab 2 of those straight ones, and one of the hearts, and then that amazing sticker. And that Everything Together set has some dot stamps in it. It's like 3 different sizes. So I'm going to just stamp those around my elements. It's interesting. You think, oh, what am I going to do with the dots? But, then you just start stamping all over the place with them. And then I adhere that down to my ivory card base. And that will finish off card number 9. For my final card, I'm going to stamp my teacup 3 times onto some 110-pound Kansan XL watercolor paper using the Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink. I'm actually really loving that for watercolor. It just works beautifully, like it says, watercolor. So clearly, I'm planning to do a little bit more watercoloring, and I skipped all that watercoloring for the sake of an already long video. And so all I'm doing here is obviously just stamping it down. I'm kind of making sure that the paper is going to line up because it's basically a scrap, so I don't want to waste it. And so once all of those are stamped and I have watercolored those, I grab out my Gansai Tomby Starry Colors watercolor. And to activate those, you basically just spritz some water in it. And then I'm going to take my card base, which is one of the 3-pack of smoke folded note cards that came in the kit. And I'm going to splatter that gold paint all over the background. I'm also going to use that gold paint, and I'm going to paint the rims of my teacups. I don't know, it just kind of reminded me of, you know, when you have teacups that look so elegant like that, just being at grandma's house or something like that. I ended up also deciding that I wanted to take a paper towel and kind of cover up my flowers. And I'm going to splatter paint all over the teacups as well. Just something about gold splatter, I'll tell you. You know, you get to make a mess. And no one's judging. So I fussy cut those out. And off screen, I guess I just didn't get it on tape, but I painted a scrap of watercolor paper with that same gold paint, and then I ran my Simon Says Stamp heart die that came in the kit through my Sizzix Sidekick. If you don't have gold paper, but you do have gold paint, that's another way to do it. And I put down a thin piece of white cardstock so that I could have a little bit of a base. I didn't just want these floating around. And I used my Ranger Multimedia Matte Adhesive to glue these down. That 110-pound watercolor paper is pretty thick, and so you're going to want a fairly strong adhesive to keep these down. And so I'm just kind of placing them down, deciding where I want my teacups. Obviously they're going to overlap pretty well. And I'll just keep gluing those down. You can't see it very well, but that gold splatter is just, I don't know, it's just so neat on the background. And once I have those where I want them down as best as I can, I use that same Ranger Multimedia Matte Adhesive, and I'm going to use that on the back of the heart script. Just dotting it. You don't want it seeping out the sides too much. And this is a fairly intricate die, so I'll use my reverse tweezers. I'll place it down. And then actually to give it a little bit more, I'm going to take a stamp block, a big one, and I'm just going to let that sit for a bit. And then I finally decide to stamp the rest of my sentiment on there in jet black ink. And I'm playing with fire here. I should have done this ahead of time, because if I'd screwed it up, boy. Anyway, it worked out. So I take those epoxy stickers that came in the kit, and I'm just putting those over a couple of those teacups. And then I'm going to try and decide which one I want also on the back, because I just felt like it needed one more, a big one. And so I take that mustard yellow one, because it kind of is close enough to gold, and I put that on there. And that'll end up finishing off card number 10. So let's take a look at the last 5 cards. So here are cards 6 through 10. If you missed cards 1 through 5, head on back to my channel and check out part 1. As always, I appreciate you watching my videos and liking and subscribing to my channel. And as always, thanks for stopping by.